So when it comes to working with students and inquiry in the classroom, it's important that you are prepared to ask additional questions. These questions help students to clarify information, dig deeper into the content, and reach rigorous higher order thinking processes. So it's critically important to have questions ready. You can stimulate conversations and guide explorations as well as explanations this way. So here are some great questions that you can ask your students to continue that process. Why did you decide on this claim? Why did your group decide to use that approach when analyzing data? What other claims did you discuss before you went with this one? Can you tell me more about that? How do you know your calculations are correct? There's lots of questions out there that we can ask students, but these are some recommended ones to continue the volley of conversation. So we want our students to get to this point within the 5E model for themselves, not only us, but for themselves to evaluate their learning. So let's reflect just for a moment. And again, you can use an Edmodo page if you wish, or maybe Google Classroom. Maybe that's something that your district uses. But in a group reflection, talk about these questions. So what benefits do you see to having your students participate in these types of activities, the mystery tube, the observations that you made with the M&M? So activities like those. How would you use these strategies in your classroom? Take a minute to think about where you might implement inquiry-based learning. What extension could be added to the lab to increase the inquiry? Okay, so facilitators, go ahead and pause the video here and discuss these questions in your group. Next, we're going to do an activity called Commit and Toss. So the previous questions, which I'll go back to in just a moment, you're going to pick one of those and look to see where do you see opportunities to evaluate during our time of inquiry. Could be another question that you want to visit. So writing down a couple of those opportunities and also addressing one of these previous questions could be something that you want to write in the Commit and Toss. So how does Commit and Toss work? Well, first what you're going to do is you're going to write down your question and your answer on a piece of paper. Then you're going to crumple up that piece of paper, and then your facilitator is going to ask you to stand and make a large circle in the room. Once you've made that circle, you will then make eye contact with someone else across from you. Make sure they see you, and then gently toss the piece of paper to that individual. You're going to toss it several times to various individuals in the circle. Your facilitator may even stop the group from throwing and say, pass your paper one person to the left. Now pass it 3 times to the left. Now pass it once to the right, and so on. So facilitators, go ahead and stop the video here and begin Commit and Toss. So for the final piece of this activity, let's talk a little bit about student capabilities. I've provided you with a handout called Skills and Capabilities and things that your students should be able to do once leaving the secondary science classroom. So we're going to look at their process skills. Monitoring for understanding is important for teachers to do in order to check for gaps in learning. Summarizing their findings. This is definitely a process skill to show evidence and reasoning for their claims. Searching for information. Just having that skill of research and not being afraid to go out there on the net or in a library and look up information to support claims is important, especially in science. Making predictions. Not only do we ask students to do this on the STAR test, so if you're a 9th grade or an 8th grade teacher, this is where these process skills become incredibly important. So if you are a 6th, 7th, 8th grade teacher, you are also supporting that 9th grade teacher as well, and into the additional grades, 10th, 11th, 12th, and beyond the classroom. So really developing those making predictions skills is important for success in a science classroom. And then finally, asking questions. By the time students are in high school, I wonder if you know how many questions they ask a day. The answer is 2. You spend about 1/3 of your life asking students questions. Shouldn't they be asking you? So helping them cultivate that skill and giving them the tools to create questions such as question stems and sentence stems is important here as well. So let's look over your handout together. This is the handout that your facilitators should have provided for you. If you haven't passed it out yet, facilitators, please feel free to pause the video here. What you are going to do is go through this list of skills and abilities in the science classroom. Remember, this is mainly for secondary science students. If you would think about the activities that we have completed, the M&M lab, the mystery tube, and CER, and look at these sections, these abilities, and just kind of make note where that skill was used in those activities. I bet you will be surprised by your findings. Your facilitator is going to open up a whole group discussion so you can all talk about what skills were used where and how we can build upon those skills using those activities. So facilitators, go ahead and pause the video here and have those conversations.